Hey, my name is PolishLynx, welcome to Narcissu, a little iris. And let's begin that fourth chapter, 8-year-old wine. The title of it is... 8 years later, winter. Ooh. Soon it was going to become December, and early snow seemed to be fluttering in. In the midst of that, I was once again facing someone. She hasn't changed at all, somehow. Thinking back, I've killed dozens of people since that day. I don't remember the exact number. I kept count for the first few years, but now I've stopped thinking about those I've killed. It was just that I had no intention of regretting the number of people I'd killed in order to live these 8 years. Once teacher had instructed me to try to keep a weak stance and keep a fearful expression to my face. I hadn't had to think about that, it happened naturally, I was truly afraid. But now, I needed to pretend. After killing person after person in the same way, there were times when I almost broke into a smile. Over there, just one more step and you will lose your footing. In the next instant I will stab you in the face, and then you will fall over. Otherwise, you would flail around with your sword. But don't worry, either way, you will just die quickly. Even though there wasn't an attendant with this opponent, I signaled my teacher with my eyes. Don't interfere. That's what it meant. This person slipped right around the usual spot, and in that instant I lunged with my sword and sliced his throat. Looks like this soldier is the curl up and die type. Yeah, beggar. First you come to kill her and now you are begging for your life. Pathetic. As I said that, I placed my sword on the nape of his neck. And with a grunt I put strength into my arms. Instantly a black puddle began to spread. The smell of blood wafted through the cell. I pulled my sword from the already still source of the black puddle and whipped off the blood. And next, as always, I signaled with my eyes to teacher to clean up the body. My teacher looked at me and murmured, well, obviously she would change after something like that. I answered vaguely. I wasn't really conscious of it, but I probably had changed. But more than anything else, if I didn't change, I probably would have been long dead. Nope. Right, you gain nothing but dying. There were many paths to death, but only one to survive. There was no other choice. Or perhaps I should have given up and died back then. At this point I had no idea which choice would have been right. However, I'd opted for the latter, and by a stroke of luck I continued to survive. That was all there was to it. A few days later, as winter was slowly getting into full swing, the snow that had been falling since yesterday finally cleared, and a bright, clear blue sky spread out overhead. In the midst of this, my teacher was absent for some reason. The door was left unlocked. I could have bolted if I wanted, but he knew quite well that I had no intention of doing so. Even if I left this prison, I was still stuck within the castle walls. I also knew that I wouldn't be able to escape to the outside. Eventually, teacher returned, looking surprisingly disturbed. Before I could ask him what had happened, well, took them long enough. I repeated his words without thinking. It had taken so long to get to this point. I didn't have to ask who won. I'd heard before that my mother country was the weaker one. I didn't feel strongly about it. Even at the start of all this, I couldn't remember their faces. But that did mean one thing was certain. Finally, I would be publicly executed. There would be no more one-on-one challenges. Most importantly, I didn't sense any need for them to keep me alive.
じゃあ、いよいよお別れね。
Whispering that, I looked beyond the bars at the sky. There was the endlessly clear winter sky. I'd been nocturnal these past few years, so it had been a while since I gazed at the sky during the day. I quickly recalled the first time I came to this country. It had been a winter day where the snow was fluttering down. Looking back, I was surprised I'd managed to survive these 8 years. For I'd had no other choice. I had done well staying alive, and I had killed many people. Of course, I had no intention of regretting that. Even now, if I could continue to live, I would prefer to do so. But since that wasn't to be, then there is no helping it. It seems that over the nearly 10 years here, it seeped into me. An unfaltering attachment to life, and equally strong an acceptance of death. That was probably why, when this inevitable day finally arrived, I simply accepted it. As I was thinking that suddenly...
今夜、ここを抜け出す。
Mustache guy, really? Ooh. I couldn't help but respond in sprites. Teacher's words were just that shocking.
明日にはお前も処刑されるだろうから、抜け出すには今夜しかない。
Now he surprised me, really.
もしかして、まだ私を必要としている？
ああ、何度も言ったが、それが俺の役目だ。
Saying just that, teacher once again went outside. Just what was this? I didn't really understand. Did it mean it was alright for me to continue living? Yes! That night, the snow once again began to fall, and we were under the night sky.
こっちだ、早く。
Avoiding people's eyes, I followed after teacher. This is the first time I've seen this scenery in 10 years. And eventually we exited the castle and continued for a while. In an untraveled field somewhere, he suddenly stopped. Looking around, a number of people seemed to have surrounded us. Now this guy looks a total creep. Everyone wore light armor and had swords hanging from their belts. Their expressions weren't grim, but neither were very calm. At the very least, I knew that they were not on my side. And towards those people, teacher raised his hand in greeting. They raised their hands also.
ねえ先生、これも芝居か何か？
いや、違う。
よくわからないけど、私殺されるの？
Eh?
まあ、そういうことだ。
What? Mustache! I shouldn't have changed my thinking about you. Totally. God damn it. That's all he said. In other words, he'd known from the start this would happen, and had brought me out here. I didn't know what he was trying to accomplish, but it seemed I was going to die.
申し訳ないね、姫様。
One of the people, apparently a priest, spoke to me. Of course, fucking priest.
念のために終戦までは生かしていたが、今となってはな。
どうせ明日には処刑されるのに。
お前に言っても理解できないだろうが、公の場所では死なせたくない。
How about you die, priest?
そうね。私には難しいことはわからないわ。
Whether that reason was a political one or something to do with the ruling house, I didn't know or care enough to ask. What I did understand was that this man was most likely the reason I hadn't been killed for all this time. And very soon I was probably going to be killed.
先生の目的もそれだったのね。
ずっとそう言ってきたつもりだが、意外だったか？
Exactly, weird mustache. Never trust weird mustache.
別に。
I wasn't all that surprised. I knew enough to understand that this was how things worked. Keeping yourself alive was more correct than anything else. That's what I had learned up until now, and what I actually believed. It wasn't very difficult to understand. I had just simply lost my useful value. That's right, it wasn't that difficult to understand.
かつて小さなイリスだったものは死に、それからただの人となった。でもそれも間もなく終わりを告げようとしている。ただそれだけのことだった。
人は旅の途中で目的を見つけるという。
Oh? Should I raise my hopes that there will be a traveler who will save her or something like that?
だがそんなのは嘘だ。誰もが目的を持った上で旅に出る。
Even if it's only a vague idea, people only start a journey because they have a purpose in mind. At the least, I had a goal and a reason. Before I knew it, I found myself wandering on and on for 8 years. The day the long war finally ended, I had once again lost the chance to complete my goal. And without a destination, I was about to head to another land. Unexpectedly, someone approached me. Apparently, it was a priest in an important position in the country. Coming from a country just barely out of a war, I had an idea of what kind of request it would be. Obviously, because they don't want their hands dirty. Either to kill someone or to take something. For someone like me to be called in, it was probably the former. So I decided to stay here, in exchange for a ridiculous amount of silver. And it was right in the middle of winter, because they stole it from people, right? Spring was still a long time away. The next night, outside of the castle, I was led to an empty field. I looked around and saw a number of men like myself. Not real soldiers, that is, but people like myself who gathered for silver. Oh, so... seriously? Pathetic, church, pathetic. I had heard that I was killing royalty, so I had expected to be fighting with a number of people.
まあ、なるようになるだろう。
Alright, man. Traveler, you are going to save her, understand? I'm telling you to save her. Thinking that, I waited for a while. Finally, what appeared was a dirty little girl. Just what was the meaning of this? I had definitely been told I was killing someone from the royal family. Then this dirty one here was a princess? I had thought that there would be a large number of guards, but she's all alone, and she appeared neither afraid nor ready to run. Instinctively, I whispered to the guy next to me.
おい、お前どう思う？
え？ああ、こりゃ楽な仕事だな。
With just that, the mercenary gave a thin smile. I bent my lips similarly. But inside, I thought I caught the smell of death. Not someone else's, my own. This might be a dangerous situation. Of course, I wasn't afraid of this princess, or whatever she was. Rather, I felt my own situation was dangerous. At a glance, everyone around me seemed like myself. Here, for money. But you got the money already, so... pfft. Of course you are going against the priest and such Swedish, come on. In a post-war country like this, there were probably lots of ex-soldiers around. But even so, to sentence someone connected to reality without an execution, but an assassination, and to let the troll fall not upon actual soldiers but gathering mercenaries like us, it's not very hard to figure out the answer. We were probably all going to get killed later. I wasn't sure of the details, but more than likely, they wanted to keep this shrouded in secrecy. Sadly, the worse the situation is, the more likely my gut feeling is accurate.
申し訳ないが、そんなくだらん理由で死ぬわけにはいかない。
Yes! There is hope! Making that decision, I looked at my surroundings. I had two choices, run away or kill everyone. No! Be a man! Choose the second one! From the looks of it, no one here had horses on hand. If I ran for it, I could probably escape into the forest. And there wasn't anyone with a short bow either. Even if there were, I could get away before they could get a shot off. But even if I ran away, the end result would still be the same. Since I knew about this, I'd be chased down and killed eventually. In that case, I'll just have to kill everyone! 4 on the right, 2 or 3 on the left. I can probably ignore the princess in front of me, yes. If I'm going to do this, best to start right now, before swords were drawn. Luckily, probably since it was just one girl and they all had their guard down, I was the only one in proper armor. I guess this could work out somehow. I quietly dropped back. With this many opponents, I didn't feel like fighting them head on like an idiot. Of course, I was definitely going to kill that priest, and I had no intention of letting the other mercenaries get away. Escape meant there would be mouths left, and mouths became words. If someone followed the trails of words, before long my own life would be in danger.
じゃあ、やるか。
I took a deep breath, and making sure no one saw, I drew my sword. I only had one target area, the back of the knee. If you're cut from behind in a place where your armor is thin, you have no chance of protecting yourself. I hunched down and crept closer as if climbing across their shadows. And first, against the trio to my right. Wasn't that 4 to your right? Never mind, I struck. In moments, the 4 men on my right were cut down. Now it's 4 again. Okay.
お前、何を
One mercenary cried out in surprise at being cut out of nowhere. The remaining 3 all shouted something as they fell on the ground, to the ground. Jumping over the ones rolling around on the ground, I dashed towards the ones on my left. Victory and defeat were decided in an instant. I needed to finish everything before they realized anything had happened. I ran behind the 3 to my left as well, striking them all at once. Rising a short cry, the 3 on the left dropped to the ground, where rivulets of blood flowed from them. Thus I was able to cut one or both of everyone's knees. Ouch.
どうやら誰も逃すことなく切れたな。
Everyone was either sitting on the ground, clutching their leg, or rolling around on the ground, but the priest! There wasn't anyone standing, and of course no one who could run. Right now, the only one standing were myself and that princess, or whatever she was. That's right, there wasn't any need to kill them all in one stroke. So long as they couldn't move, it was enough. Afterwards, you can take your time and kill them, one by one. Thinking that to myself, I approached one that was sitting on the ground.
お前、何を
悪いな、司祭さん。皆殺しにすることにしたよ。
皆殺しって、裏切るつもり
Betray who? He said no more. I didn't care to listen, and I knew what he would say regardless. After killing the priest, I approached the mercenary rolling on the ground next to him. I planned on killing all of them the same way.
なあ、助けてくれ。頼む。
すまんね。
Saying that, I put the point on my blade on the neck of his armored helmet. After that, I just needed to push down. Ouch. And so, one by one, I went around stabbing everyone in the neck. Stained with the blood that flowed out, the grassy field glistened darkly in the moonlight. You could almost believe it was the evening dew. As I went about killing, some of the men took up their swords in defiance, even though they were unable to stand. For those, I first cut off their arms, then on the return stroke I lopped off their heads. It wasn't like I wanted to make them suffer as I killed them. If possible, I'd like to have it be an easy single thrust to the neck. And eventually, looking at one I was about to kill that way, I stopped.
おい、こいつはどうする
Weird mustache, right? I said this to the princess or whatever she was. The whole time earlier, she was watching silently.
お前、さっき先生とか呼んでたけど、仲間か仲間ならば、助けてやらないこともないぞ。
I didn't really know what was going on, but I figured if they were the same side of someone about to die, there wasn't much chance of them giving anything away. I'd put out any live calls, but I wasn't out to kill without reason. I pondered that while I waited for a response.
殺して。
Slowly it was all she answered with.
いいのか？お前の先生なんだろ。
逃がせば私の命が危うくなる。あなたと同じ理由よ。
まあ確かにそうだわな。
I pointed my sword back towards the soldier in front of me, and placing the point of my sword on his neck.
悪いな。そんなわけで死んでくれ。
ああ、しょうがねえや。
He fell forward just like that, and his black blood sprayed straight up, dampening the field. Sometimes the moonlight would show that it wasn't black but red. There were 6 dead bodies in the general vicinity, all reeking of blood.
じゃあさっさと消えるか。
Wiping off the blood of my sword and body, I began to walk in the opposite direction of the castle. Seeing as they'd gathered up a bunch of mercenaries, there probably wasn't anyone else following us or in hiding. But I couldn't stay in a place like this for long. I'd do best to head for the forest quickly.
しかし、最初から法外な銀貨の時点で怪しむべきだったかもしれない。
A bit, yes. Thinking that, I walked.
おい、何の真似だ？
I looked back to see the princess following me.
あなたについていくのよ。別に構わないでしょ。
構わなくもないが、その理由次第だな。
This princess definitely had people who wanted her dead. There was the possibility that someone else would want it in the future, and being with someone like that did me no favors. Do you really think someone would actually recognize her?
あなたと一緒の方が生き延びる可能性が上がるわ。
なるほど。生きたいわけなのか。
It was an extremely obvious answer.
だが姫様、一つ断っておくが、別に俺は生きたいわけじゃない。
じゃあ、さっきのはどうして？
俺は自分にふさわしい死に方を探しているだけだ。
Well, she probably wouldn't understand even if I taught her. As I thought that, I began to walk into the forest. Along the way, I turned around. She was still following me, but eventually she would probably run off somewhere on her own. The next day. A clear sky spread wide above us, an endlessly clear winter sky and cold wind around us. I was walking on a mountain road far from any villages. Even though I had a goal, I didn't have a destination, so it wasn't anything but wandering. However, because of what happened the other day, I continued to avoid being seen for a while by going through the forest. And as I wandered, she continued to follow me.
なあ姫様、お前どこまでついてくるんだ？
少なくともこの国を出るまでよ。
この国？
It was true that even though I was wandering free, I had been aiming to get to a territory outside the country as soon as possible.
だけどこの国って、お前この国の姫なんだろ？
But they want her dead. I'm really surprised. I hadn't heard the details, but that's what the priest had said before.
だったらどうなのよ。
は？
この国の姫ならよそに行っちゃいけないとでも。
いや、別に好きにすればいい。
Exactly. I don't care what this girl's situation is. If she becomes a burden, all I have to do is run and lose her. And in an emergency, I don't mind cutting her down. We're in the forest, so the wolves would handle cleanup for me.
とはいえお前、仮にも姫様なんだろ？だったら自分の国へ、家に帰ったらどうだ？
どうやって？
別に難しいことじゃないだろ。家に帰り、ドアを開け、ただいまと言えばいい。
残念ながら家も家族もないわ。
そりゃ悪いこと言ったな。
I said those words, but I didn't feel any sympathy. I had heard that this country had just ended a war of almost 10 years. If you felt sympathy for something like this, you would never be down.
とはいえ、まあ俺もこの国を出ることには賛成だ。
じゃあいいじゃないの。
ついてはどこの国に向かうのがいいか教えてくれ。
If nothing else, she was royalty. Unlike a petty mercenary like myself, she should know things about other countries I couldn't learn.
どうだ？お前だったら内部事情にも詳しいだ。
Probably not really.
隣のアリーナは皆殺しにあったからやめた方がいい。
ああ、そりゃ知っている。他には？
知らない。
なんだよ。まったくお前は事情通だな。
悪かったわね。
The princess replied to my sarcasm while glaring at me. Her eyes shot daggers at me, very unlike a princess.
しかし、こいつも変わったやつだな。
She looked like a little more than a kid, but she had a lot of nerve. It was good that she didn't chatter on endlessly next to me, but she would absolutely never speak on her own. And of course she never smiled, wearing only a sullen, angry expression.
まあいい。とりあえず南に向かう。
It wasn't as if I had a goal in mind, but I had decided to head south. But thanks to the incident the other day, I intended to avoid being seen. We'll have taken a pretty big detour once we get out of the mountains and through the wilderness, but we should be able to get out of this country in a month. And until then, this princess can go off somewhere. And even if she comes along, it has nothing to do with me. 2 days later, the snow started dancing down during the day, that eventually grew stronger. The cold wind mercilessly stole the heat from my body. It seemed winter wasn't about to end soon. Today, we continued through the forest. An entire day had passed since then, and as usual, the princess was following right behind me. There wasn't any particular problem with it, but I was starting to run out of food. Of course I had silver, I also had things I could sell for money, you could also hunt something down. However, that was useless this far from any villages. Gold and gemstones can be traded for food if there aren't any people around. And yet, we can't just go to a town. I was avoiding prying eyes by staying in the mountains on my way out of the country, even though I knew full well it was a big detour. Thanks to that, we had to cross a number of ravines and couldn't use horses, and in this season there wasn't much food in the mountains.
こんなことなら変なことに関わるのではなかった。
Holding the large amount of silver from that priest in my hand, I complained under my breath.
しかし腹減ったな。
そうね。
Once in a while, we'd exchange meaningless words as we walked. And I learned a few things about this princess. She didn't say so outright, but it seemed she was being pursued. You might say she's the princess of a fallen kingdom. But that was natural if you thought about it. Someone who was sentenced to execution wasn't going to be allowed to run free. Let alone a survivor of a defeated country's royal family. Should I get out of here before things get messy? As I thought about it, I saw the shadow of someone cross my vision.
俺は
It was a young soldier. Soldier? What the fuck is soldier? Soldier, walking with his shoulders dropping. It seemed to be a soldier from this country, but he didn't appear to be pursuing us. The war had just ended, so it was probably a Leviate soldier returning home.
なあ姫様、じっとしてろよ。万一のこともあるし、下手なことをしては。
Saying that much, I stopped. She stood next to me, her hand on her sword.
おい、心配しすぎだぞ。
だから長生きできたのよ。
Saying that, she drew her sword.
まさかお前、やる気か？
大丈夫。一人なら軽いわ。
おい、やめておけ。あれはただの機関兵だぞ。
But, on hearing of my request to stop, she burst from the shadow of the leaves. Suddenly, without any struggle, the young soldier died. Even in death, his face wore an expression of surprise. And the princess immediately started rummaging through the letter bag the soldier held.
しょうがねえな。
With a single sigh, I walked over and started going through the leather bag with her. I found a thin loaf of bread, which I shoved in my mouth as I spoke to her.
おい。何も殺さなくてもよかったんじゃねえのか。
But now, when you think about it, there are animals around the forest for sure, right? So when they smell blood, they will appear and BAM! Target acquired, you have possible meat. Well, if you are hungry enough, there is meat already in front of you. I know that sounds terrible, but you know, it was different times.
うるさいわね。
She said just that and shoved some bread into her mouth as well. Next I pocketed a small amount of silver found, the wooden rosary I threw into the forest. With a face still damp with blood splatter, eating bread she stole without pause. I'm not in a position to talk about others, but... merciless, that was the word. Hard to believe she's a princess.
なあ、姫様。一つ質問していいか。
何よ。
そいつは殺されるほどの悪いことをしたのか。
さあ。
だったら別に殺すこともないだろう。
では、私は黙って殺されろとでも。
Saying that, she kicked the already motionless body down the ravine. The dead body fell limply into the ravine, breaking 3 branches as it went. But she didn't even give that a glance and whipped the blood from her sword. She paid no heed to the blood spray on her face and left it alone. Afterwards, as if nothing had ever happened, she started walking briskly ahead. Of course, considering the princess's situation, it's not that I couldn't understand. If somehow she were found by her pursuers, the only thing waiting was certain death. If not that, then simply starvation. Anyone in a similar situation might do the same as the princess. Yes, I agree with that. I had no idea what she lived through to get here. But I knew was that it must have been much harsher than would normally be possible. Alright, let's end this here. Chapter 5 coming tomorrow! Hope you enjoyed it and see you then. Bye bye!